The call came in just before dawn. A weak, repeating signal had been picked up on an emergency frequency, traced to the old radio tower on Hollow Ridge. That place had been dead for more than a decade. No power. No maintenance. No reason for it to come alive again. The drive up was quiet. The air had that early morning stillness that makes every sound feel wrong. The tower appeared through the fog, tall, rusted, leaning slightly, the top lights still blinking red like a heartbeat that refused to stop. No power grid fed it. No one had touched it since the shutdown. Yet there it was, awake. I parked near the base and started up the hill. Frost covered the ground. No footprints, no tire marks. Halfway up, I noticed a cable, new, thick, snaking through the dirt toward the summit. Someone had been here recently. At the top, the service shack stood half buried in moss. The metal door was broken open, the hinges warped. Inside, dust, cold air, the hum of electricity. The console glowed faintly, screens flickering with static. One monitor displayed a single line of text, repeating over and over. Transmission loop active, source unknown. The timestamp in the corner matched the time of the reported signal. On the desk, a pile of old cassette reels, labeled in black marker. Night 1, Night 2, all the way to Night 21. The last tape was still in the player. I pressed play. Static. Then a low humming tone, mechanical, almost rhythmic. After a few seconds, a voice. Distant, flat, hard to place. The words were broken by interference, but I caught fragments. Still repeating, same pattern, not human. The tape ended with a sharp burst of static. Then, for a moment, the room seemed to breathe. The lights flickered once, twice, and from the main speaker came a soft click. Then a faint whisper, like something brushing the inside of the frequency itself. Not words this time. Just sound. Like the echo of someone listening back. I stepped outside. The wind had picked up. The tower light blinked against the mist, steady and slow. At the edge of the clearing, footprints. Fresh. Leading away from the shack, down the hill, into the trees. I followed them until they vanished near a patch of frozen dirt. That's when I saw it, a concrete tunnel mouth, half collapsed, hidden under tangled roots. Faded paint on the wall spelled out something barely legible. Station 9 to 14, AUX access. The same name from the transmission log. I stared into the tunnel. Dark. Silent. Cold air pushing out in slow breaths. And somewhere inside, a faint electrical hum. The tunnel descended deeper than I expected. The walls were slick with condensation, the smell of rust and mold heavy in the air. My flashlight beam caught old maintenance signs, arrows pointing nowhere, wires hanging loose like veins cut from the ceiling. A few minutes in, I started hearing the hum again, faint, but constant. It wasn't coming from any one direction. It felt everywhere. It vibrated through the metal floor, through my hands when I touched the wall. Like the place was alive, pulsing with an invisible current. I found the first door on the left, sealed with a chain that had long since corroded. When I pushed, it gave way. Inside, rows of outdated radio consoles, most broken, their screens shattered. On the far desk, one small recorder blinked a red light, the battery somehow still holding a charge. I pressed play. A man's voice filled the air, tired, anxious, recorded decades ago. We've isolated the signal. It's repeating every 6 hours. Same frequency, same tone. It's not broadcasting out, it's coming in. A pause. Then another voice, slower, rougher. Then shut it down. We did. 3 times. It keeps starting itself. The tape ended with a high-pitched whine that made my flashlight flicker. When it stabilized again, I realized something. The hum outside had grown louder. I stepped back into the corridor. The air felt charged, almost metallic. Farther down, I saw a faint light leaking from under another door. When I approached, the hum stopped. Completely. The silence that followed was heavier than sound. I pushed the door open. The room was small, square, and lined with equipment, but in the center was something new. A large transmitter, jury-rigged from modern parts. Recently installed. Cables ran to a generator still humming quietly. Someone had been here very recently. On the desk next to it, a laptop. Screen cracked, battery almost dead. I opened it. The desktop was empty except for one file. do_not_transmit.wave. I double-clicked. The screen froze for a moment. Then the same tone from the tape began to play. Only this time, it wasn't faint. It was sharp, rising, mechanical, a pattern that repeated in perfect intervals. My flashlight went out. The monitor flickered. The tone grew distorted, until it almost resembled breathing. I pulled the laptop's power cable out. The sound stopped. When the silence settled again, I noticed something on the floor, a shoe print, still wet, leading toward a service hatch. Fresh mud. I crouched down, lifted the hatch. A ladder descended into darkness. The same faint hum drifted upward, pulsing, steady, alive. I turned on my flashlight and looked down. The walls below shimmered slightly, not from moisture, but from the glow of faint red lights embedded deep in the structure. The transmission wasn't coming from the tower. It was coming from below it. I tightened my grip on the flashlight and started climbing down. The ladder felt endless. Every rung was slick, every breath echoed against metal. The deeper I went, the more the hum returned, no longer faint, but steady, rhythmic. Like the tower had a heartbeat. At last, my boots hit the floor. It wasn't concrete. It was something else, metal, but warm under my soles. The air was thick with dust and static, and a faint red glow illuminated a vast chamber that shouldn't have existed beneath a radio relay. Rows of old transmitters stretched into the dark, their panels alive with dim, flickering lights. Some were labeled Echo 3 Deep Band Relay Signal Vault. They looked too advanced, too clean for something left abandoned since the 70s. I ran my fingers across one of the panels. Warm. Active. A low hiss came from the corner. I turned my flashlight, just in time to catch a figure moving between the machines. Police! My voice cracked in the vast space. The echo came back distorted, warped, like it passed through a filter before returning. The figure froze. Then moved again, fast, ducking behind another row. I followed, weaving through the maze of equipment until I reached a clearing. And there, lit by the soft pulse of red lights, was a makeshift workstation. Open notebooks filled with frequency charts. Maps of the area covered in scribbled coordinates. And a camera, still recording. The small screen showed my face, framed in red light. The timestamp read live. I froze. There was no antenna here, no satellite link. Yet it was streaming, to somewhere. I picked up one of the notebooks. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. It won't stop. Every time we shut it down, it restarts. It's learning the pattern of interference. It knows we're listening. Another page, later in the same hand. Don't go below the main relay. The signal isn't human anymore. Something clicked behind me. I turned, but there was no one. Only a new sound, a mechanical whir, rising in tone, syncing perfectly with my pulse. Then, without warning, all the red lights flared white. The transmitters powered up in unison, screens flickering with numbers and shapes, coordinates, waveforms, bursts of data that moved too fast to read. The hum became a roar. Every speaker on the wall screamed with the same tone I'd heard before. Only now it was layered, fractured, thousands of voices buried in static. I covered my ears and stumbled backward. The machines vibrated violently, lights strobing in and out of sync. Through the noise, I caught something, a pattern flashing across one of the monitors. It wasn't random. It was forming words. "Hello, detective." And then silence. Everything shut off at once. The lights, the noise, the vibration. The entire chamber went dead. I stood there in the dark, the sound of my breathing the only thing left. And then my radio, the one on my belt, the one I'd turned off hours ago, crackled to life. A single voice, faint, mechanical. "You heard us now." Then the connection dropped. I looked up at the ladder leading back to the surface. Somewhere above me, the storm had returned. The air smelled of ozone, sharp and clean. When I started climbing, I noticed something written along the wall, words carved into the metal itself, barely visible in the beam of my flashlight. "Do not answer." I didn't. I climbed, one step at a time, until I reached the hatch and the cold air hit my face. But when I turned to look back, the red glow below was already returning, like it had never stopped at all. When I finally reached the surface, the storm had thickened. Rain fell in thin, slanting sheets, and the wind howled against the metal structure like something alive. The tower's beacon blinked steadily through the fog, a pulse I could feel in my teeth. I tried my radio again. Only static. Even the emergency channel was dead. Back at my car, I opened the glove compartment, switched the frequency scanner on, and let it sweep through the bands. Every few seconds it caught the same low hum, that tone from below, repeating across multiple channels. Like the tower wasn't broadcasting one signal anymore. It was broadcasting everything. I should have called for backup. Instead, I just sat there, staring at the rain hitting the windshield. And in that steady rhythm, I started to hear something else. A whisper beneath the static. Almost like words. Not through the radio, through the sound of the rain itself. I turned off the scanner. The whisper didn't stop. I left the tower behind and drove back toward Hollow Ridge, but the road felt different. The trees looked closer. The fog thicker. My headlights caught shapes that weren't there when I came up, utility poles that seemed to lean toward the road, wires humming faintly in the wind. Halfway down the ridge, I passed a maintenance truck pulled onto the shoulder. Engine off, doors open, hazard lights blinking. Inside, no one. Just the faint sound of a voice recording, looping from a small handheld transmitter. "Test signal active, pattern confirmed, do not engage further." Then static. The timestamp on the recorder read 30 minutes ago. No name, no badge, just a piece of paper taped to the dashboard. "If you hear them, don't answer." The handwriting was the same as the notes in the bunker. By the time I reached the town, the power was flickering. Street lights blinked in sequence, off, then on, then off again, like a slow electrical pulse running through the grid. At the police station, the generator kicked in automatically. Inside, the night operator was gone. The phones rang, but when I picked one up, there was no one there, just the hum again, stronger this time. I slammed the receiver down. Every light in the station flickered once, then steadied. And then, a voice came from the intercom. Not a broadcast. Not over the radio. From the building's internal system. "Pierce. You went below." It wasn't a question. I looked up at the speaker grill above the door, but no one was there. "It's awake now." The voice was calm, almost kind. familiar somehow. Then, a long pause. You shouldn't have listened. The power cut out again. The room went dark. In the glow of my flashlight, I saw my own reflection in the glass window of the dispatch room. Behind it, for just a second, another figure stood, too still, too tall. Then it flickered away like bad reception. I reached for the radio again, switched it off completely, and ripped the wires from the wall just to stop the hum. But it didn't stop. It was inside the silence now. The red warning light on the generator blinked 3 times. Then a faint mechanical tone started rising from the floor vents, the same pattern, the same pulse. The same thing I'd heard below the tower. I packed what I could. Case files, tapes, the notebook I'd taken from the station under the ridge. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay there. When I stepped outside, the fog had swallowed the town. The tower's light was visible even from miles away, glowing through the mist like a signal flare. But the strange part, it wasn't alone anymore. Other red lights blinked back from the distance. Towers that weren't supposed to exist. I didn't sleep. I don't think I've slept since the tower came alive. The sound follows me, not through speakers anymore, but through everything that hums. Streetlights, engines, even my own heartbeat. I drove until the fog broke into open countryside. The horizon was a smear of gray and static rain. But the red lights never left. Far in the distance, across the fields, they blinked in perfect rhythm with one another. Every radio I passed, even when switched off, emitted the same faint pulse. I stopped counting after 20. The notes from the underground bunker were spread out across the passenger seat. The handwriting grew worse with each page. The last one read, "Once you hear it, you carry it." I parked at a gas station miles from Hollow Ridge. The clerk inside didn't look up when I entered. A small radio played behind the counter, an old model, nothing digital. "Long night?" I asked, voice hoarse. He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the static. I realized the radio wasn't tuned to any frequency. It was just noise. But then, beneath it, I heard that low mechanical hum. I stepped closer. "Turn that off." Nothing. The man's lips twitched slightly, like he was mouthing something under his breath. I leaned in, and realized he was whispering in time with the sound, word for word, perfectly synced. "Transmission loop active. Source unknown." The same phrase from the tower console. I backed away. My hand brushed the shelf behind me, knocking over a flashlight display. That small clatter snapped him out of it. He blinked, confused, then looked at me like he hadn't seen me come in. "You okay?" I asked. He just shook his head, slowly, as if waking from a dream. I left the money on the counter and stepped outside. The fog had thickened again. The tower's glow was back on the horizon. I knew where I had to go. The road to Hollow Ridge was empty this time. No police, no trucks, not even the sound of birds. Only the hum. At the top of the ridge, the tower pulsed brighter than ever. Every few seconds, a faint shimmer rippled through the ground, like heat rising off asphalt. The earth was vibrating. The shack's door hung open. Inside, every screen flickered with live video feeds. Not of the tower, but of people. Hundreds of faces, eyes unfocused, mouths moving silently in unison. And at the bottom corner of each feed a label. "Receiver active." I tried to shut the system down. Pulled cables, flipped breakers, nothing changed. The hum just deepened, shaking the walls. Then a voice, not from the speakers this time. From behind me. "It's not the tower anymore." I turned. Standing in the doorway was the same maintenance worker from the truck, pale, trembling, eyes flickering with faint red light. It's in the signal. In the language of it. The shape of sound. He stepped closer, voice low, desperate. You heard it too. That means it's already using you. I can end it, I said, though my voice barely carried. He smiled, a broken, sad kind of smile. It doesn't want to end. It just wants to be heard. He raised a hand, trembling, pointing toward the console. The lights flared. It's listening right now. And then he stopped breathing. Just stopped. Like something had cut his power. The hum dropped an octave. The screens went black, all but one. My reflection stared back from it. Then, slowly, text began to type itself across the glass. Hello again, detective. The air pressure shifted, like the world itself took a breath. The signal wasn't contained anymore. It had found new transmitters. Anything that could carry sound was enough. I reached for the recorder in my coat, the same one I used for all my case notes. Its red light blinked steadily. Recording. Somewhere deep in that device, buried between frequencies, something was listening. I took one last look at the tower. The light on top flickered twice, then went dark. But in the distance, beyond the hills, another red light blinked to life.